Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Algae Corner with me, Dr. West Bishop from CPRO Corporation. In this second episode on toxic, noxious, and smelly algae, we're going to cover a specific algal group known as Cyanobacteria, and these are causing issues primarily in fresh waters. Now remember, Cyanobacteria get their name because they got this blue-green pigment called phycocyanin. This helps them in photosynthesis, but also makes them appear these different colors, blue, green, even black in color. Now these do fall in our definition of algae. They are in that no true roots, stems, or leaves category, but they are very different than any other algae out there because they are truly a type of bacteria. Now, cyanobacteria can grow in almost every habitat you can imagine, from caves to turf grass and lawns, desert crusts, hot springs, even in the snow. A very, very diverse group, and they can grow almost anywhere. However, they thrive in many surface waters throughout the country. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is blooms of cyanobacteria in lakes, in ponds and reservoirs, and surface waters that you may visit or encounter or live on a day-to-day basis. So some of the largest cyanobacteria blooms ever recorded have occurred in the recent past. Some high-profile sites that you may know of include Lake Erie or Grand Lake St. Mary's, Discovery Bay in California, Jordan Lake. There was even a state of emergency in Florida a couple years ago due to thick cyanobacteria infestations. Now, cyanobacteria can be single-celled, they can be colonial, they can be filamentous, they have many different growth forms. Many of them form large scums or mat structures in the water, but some are harder to spot. Some are distributed throughout the water column, and they can even bloom at different depths in the water. They may be 10 foot down or 20 foot down, and very difficult to see or know that you have a cyanobacteria infestation in the water. Now, this is very important to understand. This is very important to acknowledge that cyanobacteria have very different growth strategies and growth forms, so you know how to look for them in a water resource. Now, here are a few pictures of some cyanobacteria blooms. Now, these ones are pretty obvious. These ones are diagnostic of some of the key ones you'll look at. Now, first is this thick scum former. These scum-forming blooms are pretty common, pretty easy to identify. Many types of planktonic, colonial cyanobacteria can produce these scum-forming blooms, like Microcystis, Saphanozomenon, Delicospermum can form these scums. And they have this bluish tint or this blue-green tint typically to them. Now, the next group that you might see out there is also fairly diagnostic, big, thick mats. And these can be from Lyngbia, Formidium, or Talipothrix, but these dark mats can be on the bottom of a water body or surface of the water body, but these are also cyanobacteria infestations from thick filamentous cyanobacteria forms. Now, one of the most common types of cyanobacteria spreading through the country don't necessarily form these scums or mats, and they're much more difficult to identify and spot. They may just make the water appear slightly discolored, unfortunately. These cyanobacteria include Cylindrospermopsis, Pseudanabina, Planktolyngbia. They like being diluted through the water column. They grow in these big reservoirs that are highly mixed. They're much more difficult to identify as a cyanobacteria bloom because they don't necessarily form thick mats. They don't form the scums as you might typically associate with cyanobacteria infestations. So again, a lot of large lakes, a lot of large reservoirs, systems that may not be good for other types of cyanobacteria can certainly grow these planktonic forms that are distributed through the water column, and unfortunately many people don't even know they have a problem if they have these, just because there's a slight discoloration and not some of those other diagnostic growth forms. So what's so bad about these cyanobacteria, you may ask? Well, first, they're smelly. So remember, this is our toxic, noxious, and smelly episode on cyanobacteria, but let's talk about them being smelly first. And smelly means a lot of them can produce taste and odor compounds. Methyl isobornyl, geosmin are some of the common compounds they produce. These are both fishy and dirty flavored. They can make your drinking water smell bad and taste terrible to the point you can't even use it. You can't drink it. You can't use it in cooking because it smells so bad. And we can detect these taste and odor compounds at very, very low levels, around 10 parts per trillion. This is 1 second in nearly 32,000 years as an example here. So we can detect these compounds at very low levels, and they can make that water smell and taste very badly. Additionally, they can build up in fish. So if you like to eat fish like me, these compounds, if the fish are out there growing with them, can build up in fish tissue. And certainly these compounds have caused severe issues in aquaculture facilities to the tune of billions of dollars from making the fish taste bad. Now the next section I want to hit on is the toxic and noxious nature of the cyanobacteria. So cyanobacteria can produce a number of different compounds. Some of these are known to be highly toxic and can threaten the health of humans, wildlife, and pets. The name of these compounds are toxins, and we defined that in the first episode, but again, toxins are something biologically produced by these organisms that negatively influence other organisms at common levels found in the environment. Many types of toxins exist, including neurotoxins, liver toxins, gastrointestinal toxins, skin toxins. Many different types of toxins exist, and cyanobacteria can produce all of these. They can impact many different things, both humans and wildlife, and can cause diseases. Some of the neurotoxins can produce ALS and Alzheimer's. Liver toxins can cause liver failure and liver cancer. Many of these toxins have been documented to cause severe impacts to wildlife that use the water as well. The neurotoxins can move through the food chain. There's one in particular that moves up through the food chain and has caused mortalities of bald eagles and even killed a herd of wild elk. Livestock that drink out of the water are at risk. There's a lot of cyanobacteria blooms in livestock watering systems, watering ponds, and they can cause documented mortality of cows, pigs, sheep, etc. Many wildlife in the water or near the water can be exposed to these cyanobacteria toxins. Cyanobacteria are not good to eat for one, but if indeed they are consumed, those toxins can build up in the system and cause severe impacts to fish and invertebrates in the water column, such as endocrine disruption and developmental defects in young fish. Now, perhaps a larger concern than the wildlife are the human health impacts. Hundreds of people have been sickened from cyanobacteria blooms. A few years ago in Toledo, Ohio, the drinking water was shut down because of microcystins present in that system. In the state of emergency in Florida, there's many people that went to the hospital that felt nauseous, dizzy from breathing in some of these cyanobacteria toxins that can become aerosolized. Utah Lake the same way. Many children getting sick, dogs getting sick from playing in the water or just being near that lake that was full of microcystis. Now, the World Health Organization and the EPA have now both published guidelines on cyanobacteria toxin. And one thing to note here is that these are just guidelines. They're not mandated levels, but there is enough information on them that these agencies have realized that there is a big concern with these cyanobacteria toxins. So the Environmental Protection Agency actually states that children are at a higher risk, both in recreational waters and in drinking waters. You see here some of the listed recreational guidelines for children and adults, and they have a separate level for children under 6. 0.3 part per billion for microcystin, 0.7 part per billion for cylindrospermopsin is what they suggest as a guideline level to offset risk to children under 6 years old in drinking water. Very, very low levels. Very low levels of these toxins can impact humans, can specifically impact children if present in the water. They also have guidelines in recreational waters of 4 and 8 part per billion of these toxins. So again, low levels in both recreational exposures and extremely low levels in drinking water exposures, the EPA acknowledges can negatively impact human health in children. Now, the World Health Organization has also put microcystins on the possible human carcinogen lists, and links have been made to liver cancer, diseases from drinking water exposures. There's also clusters of neurodegenerative diseases that have been described from the neurotoxin exposures, BMAA, for example, anatoxin, all potent neurotoxins that cyanobacteria can produce. There's ALS clusters and Alzheimer clusters that have been identified from links with chronic cyanobacterial blooms producing BMAA, a pretty potent neurotoxin. We are exposed to these cyanobacterial toxins in many different ways. I want to talk about a few of those today. First, we're exposed through the food chain. such as fish that have been swimming around in toxic cyanobacterial infested waters can accumulate the toxin. We can eat those. Another way is through the marine food web. Now, I know these cyanobacteria are mostly freshwater and built up in freshwater systems, but sometimes these toxins are flushed down to marine environments. They can build up through fish and shellfish in the marine environment, and we can be exposed to these freshwater toxins in that way as well. And there's one other food that they can build up in, and that's irrigated crops. So crops irrigated from toxin-laden water. Cyanobacteria-infested waters are often sprayed on fruits and vegetables and even corn, and those can build up toxins in the fruit. So through the food chain, through this consumption pathway, we can be exposed to cyanobacterial toxins. The next pathway I want to talk about is drinking water. Now, many of these toxins are treated in drinking water or removed from drinking water, but not all of them. Some are pretty tough, some are pretty hardy, and they make it through the drinking water process. Now, since it's just guidelines on toxins in drinking water, there's not necessarily mandated regulations yet. That means your drinking water plant may or may not spend the money to actually test for these toxins in the drinking water process. So just be aware of that. They can be removed in the drinking water process, but may not necessarily, depending on the processes implemented in your plant. Another route of exposure is the inhalation route of exposure. This is where you breathe in either the toxin itself or small cyanobacterial cells that may arise out of the water column. And this is a very important route of exposure, first of all, because it can do some potent things. It can go straight to your brain and impact, those neurotoxins can impact your brain from this inhalation exposure, but also just shutting down the lake is not without risk. If you put up a sign to close the lake and try to stay out of it, that may offset some exposure routes. If you limit how many fish you eat out of there, or if your drinking water plant's up to par, that may limit some exposure routes, but there's a lot of people that live near cyanobacteria infested waters that are being exposed to these toxins through this inhalation exposure, just breathing it in as it comes out of the water column. So very important to note that route of exposure. Now, the last route of exposure I want to mention today is the recreational water route. This is directly swimming in the water body that has cyanobacteria in it. Also, it could be fishing or boating or just all sorts of recreational activities in cyanobacteria-infested waters. We can be exposed to those toxins in many different ways. Now, remember, children are highly sensitive to these cyanobacterial toxins, and allowing children to swim in there is not without risk. One other point here is that often you see those big scums and mats, and most people don't want to go swimming in those anyway or recreate in those. However, remember those cyanobacteria that are distributed through the water column, those small planktonic forms that can be very potent and very hard to detect unless you happen to be carrying around a microscope with you. So the best way to ensure you don't get exposed to these cyanobacteria and these cyanobacteria toxins is to go after the source. Don't let those cyanobacteria grow. Don't let them exist in your water body. Go after them before they can achieve levels that can produce toxins that would cause a concern. Keep them below threshold levels out of your water body so your kids can't be exposed, so they won't hurt you, they won't hurt the wildlife. Not managing cyanobacteria is not without risks. Not without risk to you, your children, your pets, or even your grandma. So be vigilant. Keep a close eye on your aquatic resource, on your system. Keep an eye out for those cyanobacteria and realize the threat of these toxins is real. Stay tuned for our next episodes regarding what you can do to manage these cyanobacteria, these toxic, noxious, and smelly organisms in fresh waters before they can produce these toxins that impact you. So knowing what you're dealing with is always the best step in every solution plan for this aquatic resource management market. Check out our lab service video for more information about how CPRO's lab can help. It can help identify water quality parameters that may select for these cyanobacteria, or help identify those cyanobacteria in your water sample directly. For more information, visit this link below or contact us directly. Thank you for your time.